First of all, thank you for doing this at 6 your time because I was ready for the alternative of getting up at like 4 in the morning, but now it's noon for me, so that's nice.
All right, so you're on the East Coast.
I am on the East Coast. Have you had to get up at like 3, I'm assuming, for any in the trenches that you've done?
There have been a few episodes that have been not on my optimum time. But at the same time, the people that we interview, they always give us such good stories and inspiring stuff. So it's worth waking up a few hours early or staying up a couple hours late. When we do anything that has an Australian guest, that's when the time difference gets a little bit wacky.
Yeah. All
But
right.
we
So
can deal
before,
with, yeah, we can deal with East Coast time, no problem. Between Europe and the East Coast, it's only 6 hours one way or
yeah, it wasn't
another. We're
that
all
bad.
good. No,
Yeah.
all
So
good.
before we really get into things, I just want to. So 10 days ago, about was the Christmas pudding. You
Yes, it
guys
was.
lost Alice. You had to do a little improv goon squad show. How did that?
That was fun, man. We were not expecting to do, one of our own Goon Squad songs, which is not really our song. It's Mark Bolan's song and T Rex's. It's a classic 20th Century Boy. But because we've played it so many times in so many dingy bars and so many hot and sweaty clubs, we feel like we own a piece of it at this point. So, yeah, we got introduced and everybody said the Alice Cooper band, and everybody just started clapping and expecting an Alice Cooper show. And Alice wasn't anywhere around. Apparently, he was up in his dressing room getting his in-ear monitors put in. So I just looked at Tommy and I looked at Chuck and I said, guys, let's do 20th century. And then, we all three looked at Glenn Sobel, our drummer, and he knows it. Everybody, Tommy was had a little bit of pushback. He goes, man, I haven't played that song in over a year, over since the last Goon Squad show. And I said, yeah, but it's like riding a bike. We'll get it. We'll get it. And within a verse and a chorus, we had it down. So I was happy about that.
So before we get to the guitar, I see you got a couple behind you. How did you get started in podcasting? Because you were doing it before in the trenches, correct?
Yeah, I've been doing podcasting or some sort of form of it like since kind of early on. I mean, I would say it's probably 2005, like super, super early when podcasting wasn't even, when it was just kind of a word. And I started this thing on the road on an Alice Cooper tour with my little laptop and garage band program and just a couple mics. And I figured, you know what, why not interview some of the bands that I'm on tour with, that we get to tour with Alice, because a lot of them are some of my favorite bands growing up listening to. So the one band that we were touring with that year was Cheap Trick. So that was sort of my crowning achievement interview, was being able to interview the guys in Cheap Trick while on tour with them and put it out as a podcast. Now, if anyone can find those old episodes of Big Rock Show from 2005, please send it to me, please, because I've lost them a long time ago through this hard drive or that hard drive, or, this computer evolved to this computer. So those episodes are long lost, but maybe they're lurking somewhere on the internet.
Yeah, you did get to have another one, at least with Rick Nielsen on In the Trenches, and that is out there that you have access to.
Yeah, that was kind of cool to be able to come back all those years later. And then when I did put together In the Trenches, because In the Trenches came a little bit before the pandemic. I had the idea to put a podcast out and do the same sort of philosophy, interview guitar, but focus a little bit more on the guitarists and what they bring to the table. But then all of a sudden that got expanded to bringing in singers. And then we started getting actors and comedians and anybody involved. You find so many people are influenced by music. So we just kind of opened up the floodgates. But Rick Nielsen was always, one of my guitar heroes. So it's always great to get your guitar heroes in an interview and get the best out of them.
Yeah, you started it at. I mean, it's not convenient because obviously nobody wants a pandemic, but by episode 8, you had clearly a lot of time on your hands. There was no shows. So how
We
was that
saw a
pivoting?
need. Yeah, we
Yeah,
saw that opening, and we saw that people did have a lot more time to spend indoors. We had just gotten back from there's a picture in the background of you of that where we had gotten back from. We had played,
that's convenient.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Sydney, Australia stadium like a couple weeks before everything shut down. We opened up for Queen, another one of my favorite bands, and we were ready to go back out on the road, go hit the East Coast, hit Canada, and then everything just shut down. And so we said, you know what? We don't have to completely shut off. We can shut down, stay indoors, do what we can to get through this, but we can do other things. And that's where the podcast in the trenches really started taking hold and gaining ground. Um, a big help was the guys that are on the team, on the RGA team, we call it the Roxy Guitar Army team, which would help like Scotty Hagen from our record label and Robbie Miller and Dave the Rat Rattenberry. But if, Vic Chalfant, who came on as a producer at that time, really upped the level of the podcast. So, big shout out to him and thanks to him for helping us start creating something with Big Rock or from Big Rock Show to In the Trenches. Cause I'd done, through the years, I've done different types of podcasting interview type shows. It's always been an interest of mine. I always wanted to do something like perhaps like, I don't know if you remember Jon Stewart's show or The Daily Show,
Yes. Yeah.
but with a rock and roll format. And then there were other guys that were out there doing podcasts like Joe Rogan, like Andrew Schultz, that were more comedians that had sort of gotten in on this, figured out this sort of formula to entertain people and yet be your own boss. And I've always liked that, especially that's part of what's one of the allures of being a musician and a rock and roller guitar player is being your own boss and making your own hours. And running your own podcast is pretty much the same, except I just got to figure out a way to make money off of it.
So one more podcasting question, then we're going to shift to guitar. How is
Yeah.
it to get to talk to? Because this week you have Neil Smith coming on. You've had Dennis Dunaway, Kane Roberts, Michael Bruce in the past. How is it getting to talk to people who have come before you in the Alice band?
It's a trip getting all the regular OGs on, and I've actually had the honor and privilege to play with those guys on tour with the original band and the OGs. I filled in for Glenn Buxton. Unfortunately, he passed away many years ago. But when we did this tour of the UK, I got to play with those guys every single night. So playing with them and playing their songs for so many years, knowing, you know, all getting to know all the parts is one thing, but then getting to know the people and talking to them is a whole different thing. Then you find out the inspiration of where they got those song ideas from, where they got where their headspace was when they were recording all those big hits that we play every single night with Alice. I mean, it's the reason why we're able to continue to tour to this day is because of the contributions that original band and all the subsequent bands of Alice have contributed to the legacy. And Kane Roberts is an important part of that legacy, as well as, the original guys.
Yeah. So have you ever, like, in talking to them, learned something that you didn't know about a song that you've been playing?
Absolutely. You hear the story behind the story. And sometimes you hear, who played what parts and what solos, because you always assumed it was one guy. You always assumed maybe it was an original member of the band. But then you realize that, oh, that second half of the solo in Billion Dollar Babies, even though the original band is credited on the album, of course, Steve Hunter played on that solo. Because you can just, you always have a little suspicion like, hey, that sounds a little bit different than the other guys. But then when you hear it from his mouth, oh, yeah, I played that solo. Then you go, aha, that's the reason why it sounded like that.
So now I'm going to take you back. You had mentioned Brian May and Rick Nielsen. What other people inspired you to, pick up a guitar?
Well, Those two guys are huge on and way up on the list. Top five, no doubt. Um, Eddie Van Halen is obviously all of our um, top fives. I think any guitar player that's out there will say that. Um, so Randy Rhoads is another one. The way he was able to blend classic music and then shredding together, but still make it have a blues type of feel to it. That's just an amazing talent that Randy had. Um, and then there's some other guitar players that might not get talked about every single day, but I feel are just as important, definitely important for my um, upbringing and my sort of working my way through the trenches over the years. And one of them's the guitarist from the Pat Benatar band, Neil Giraldo. I really respect his playing. I like his parts. Elliot Easton from the band called the Cars. They were a Boston-based band and just wrote great songs. But with every great song, every song had a great guitar solo. And then there was another New York-based band, well, actually English singer, but the Billy Idol band with their guitarist Steve Stevens, who is not just a guitar hero and inspiration of mine. He's also a friend. So it's kind of cool when these guitar heroes and people that you sort of spent a lot of time listening to their work growing up, you get to talk to and DM back and forth about silly shit later in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, that's got to be nice to seeing, that side of the people that you idolize.
Yeah, we're all just people and
Yeah.
just guitar players, and most of us guitar players are pretty positive people. And I found that through doing the podcast, very, very supportive of one another. I used to always think that guitar players were a bit more standoffish and a little bit more competitive than drummers. I was always a little jealous of drummers and the camaraderie that they had within their group. Like drummers, they go to lunch together. They always are doing clinics together. It seems like they're always supporting. And I felt that perhaps guitar players didn't do that as much until I started this podcast, and just the overall outpouring of guitarists and that were willing to come on the show and share their stories and share their inspiration. So it gave me hope in the humanity of guitar players, I guess you could say.
So after after you picked up a guitar, you worked your way, you were in the trenches. That's your show though. We're going to let you keep that part. In
Thank you.
96, in 96, you don't want any copyright issues. 96 you started with Alice. How did that all come about?
That came through a series of, because everyone talks about being at the right place at the right time. I always say I was in the wrong place about 1,000 times, or maybe even more, in order to get to that right place at the right time. So I had played every type of scenario at that point, as far as small gigs like clubs, empty clubs, really, really empty clubs. And I played with, a few people up until that point that had given me that experience to be able to, learn what to do in certain situations, what to do in bleak sort of scenarios. But at the same time, I played some big gigs as well before that, because I was playing with a guy from Guns N' Roses named Gilby Clarke, and I was touring with his solo band. So he had given me the taste of what it could be like to go out on a big tour. I'd never been on a big headlining tour before myself, but we opened up. We did some shows in South America with Aerosmith, and we did some touring with Motley Crue in America. That's when John Corabi was the singer of the band. So we knew the club and theater circuit pretty well. And originally, Alice had wanted Gilby and myself to be the guitar players. Unfortunately, Gilby couldn't do it because of his contractual obligations with his record label. So he gave me the full-on endorsement, and this really slim, shady character from this rehearsal room named Mates Rehearsal, this really shady character named Bobby. He all of a sudden became unshady and gave me a huge endorsement. And but at the end of the day, I had two really good endorsements, like, hey, go check this guy out, Alice. But it was up to me to get into that room at Mates, in that rehearsal room, and prove that I could actually be in the band. So, it was one of those lucky days, one of those lucky audition days that I just stepped in. I was prepared, but I also knew what role I was fulfilling. I wasn't going to be the guitar shredder, because I feel that they had already decided on Reb Beach, formerly of Winger. Now he plays in who's he playing with? I think he plays in.
I think he has Black Swan too. That's a super group he has, but he still does stuff with Winger too.
And Whitesnake too, right?
He is, isn't he?
Yeah, Dave Coverdale. David
got
Coverdale's an amazing dude. Yeah, he's got a lot going on, which is great. And the thing was, they had decided, I feel, that he was going to be their sort of 80s shredder guy. But then I realized that, there's a lot of other songs that represent Alice. You be that 70s guy. And I just took over on the chords, tried to lay them down, tried to play my solos really long, a little bit slinky and sleazy, and not perfect. It was just a little bit rock and rollish, and the rock god shined down upon me that day, and I got the go ahead. And the next thing I know, I'm on a plane down to Mexico, and our first show was filmed for VH1 special. It was being recorded for an album, which became Fistful of Alice, which is my first album that I played with. This is all the first night I've ever played on stage with Alice. This is forever before being on stage. He was at the audition, but there was no stage, and he just sat on the couch and he watched us, and he watched us play. So the first time actually playing with him, I'm not just, recording an album, doing a VH1 special. We're also playing with guys like Sammy Hagar, who came up and guested, Rob Zombie, and of course Slash came up and guested as well. And that's how my relationship with Slash sort of got to the next level.
Yeah. So you were very involved then in the Alice camp. Were you on every record when you were in the band, or did you miss a couple? You were on every one, right?
From 96, I'm represented on every record up until, I believe, the last one that I had done in that first sort of chunk of Alice Cooper was Dirty Diamonds. So from Fistful of Alice to Dirty Diamonds, I'm on those records. And then I moved to Sweden and took there was from 2006 to 2012 for me. I did a lot of work with Gibson guitars and clinics, and put my own band together up here in Sweden, but I didn't do any Alice touring. So it wasn't up until 2012 where I got back into the touring Alice band, and we've never looked back since, because we've toured every single year since then. And it's just really exciting to be able to have just completed a bunch of tracks for a new Alice band album called The Road, which should be coming out sometime, hopefully in 2022.
Yeah. So how was that? Because it was the first one with all of you guys who have been on tour together for like 7 years at this point.
Yeah. I mean, being on tour almost, I think longer. I think this lineup has been together almost as long or longer as the original band. So it is a trip for us to do it. We recorded the tracks coming off of The Road, off of a tour where we were playing a lot of shows, very few days off. So the band was ready. It was tight, and we were a cohesive unit, and we recorded it all in one room. With Alice there and Bob Ezrin there. He's always been a very key element of Alice Cooper records, is to have that production of Bob Ezrin. So he's in the room, the whole band's in the room, Alice is in the room, and we're press and play, recording and getting the tracks down. So I'm excited to hear what that's going to sound like.
Yeah, me too. So you guys just had gotten off a, what was it, month or two tour? How was that coming back on the road after a year and a half off?
Yeah, 18 months off, and then we get back into it and dive right in. It wasn't like you just did a show and let's take a couple days off and see how we feel. No, it was like four in
Yeah,
a
you guys
row
were on it.
out of the gate, and then a day off, and three in a row, day off, four in a row. It was like a lot of shows in a very short amount of time. But no better way to get back into the whole cycle of it. The only thing that was a little bit strange was that we didn't have that um, close contact that we're used to having with the fans before and after the show. On stage, it's still the same thing. You come to the show, and we are one. We're giving you energy. You're giving us the energy back, and it's cyclical. But it's the pre-show. Alice didn't do his pre-show meet and greets on this tour, and it's for good reasons. He wants to we want to keep this tour going from start to finish, and we were one of the few bands during that time that was able to start and complete an entire tour without any cancellations or anything like that. So it was important, and I'm glad we did it.
So how do you see COVID affecting the future? Because I mean, there's probably not going to be many
No.
parking lot, meetups anymore.
The
At least
million
for the
dollar
foreseeable.
question, isn't it? Yeah, the million dollar question. If I think if anybody had that answer of how COVID is, because it keeps taking a left turn every time we think it's going to take a right turn, and then when we think it's going to take a right turn, then it just goes left. So, or does a U-turn. Who the hell knows? The thing is, we have to sort of accept it as part of our future, and just realize that it might take a couple years for things to truly go back to the way that we're used to it in the past. But maybe it might not go back. Maybe there are future things that happen that do cause us to tour with more safety and scrutiny. You never know. I think the way we've been able to pull it off, and the way that the band and the audience and fans and crew have all been responsible. No one's been an asshole. No one's gone out of their way to say, or they understand the situation. So I feel that if we can continue to keep working under the safe conditions, the safest conditions possible, but still being able to, not having to perform in complete bubbles, or even worse yet, having to do those, isolation videos. I think everybody, it was a good idea for about a week, and then everybody got tired of doing isolation videos. It sounded, it was good because everyone needed to put music out to the world and do something. But everybody in their own room, and then everybody making a video from their own little cubicle, I think that kind of you could just tell that the energy is different. So hopefully you two are under a safe enough environment before and after shows. But when it comes to an actual rock show, the people and the audience can exchange that really that energy exchange is everything at a rock show. And that's the thing that very few people that don't go to rock shows don't understand. The fans understand it. That's the reason why they put up with all the bullshit. They're willing to go through such ends to get to that show. But it's really important that exchange of energy that the band and the audience has is pure and keeps going.
So you had mentioned isolation shows during the lockdown. You were one of few people who was fortunate enough to be able to play a couple acoustic gigs just around where you were. So how was that, getting to, still be out and play music while so many others were?
It was, but there was definitely a barrier during those shows, and everybody, maybe it was an unspoken barrier, but there was definitely something that wasn't the same. Because I did do some solo shows, but trust me, I was farther away from the audience than I think I've been in any sort of festival gig, to be honest with you. And the audience itself was so placed farther and farther apart. So they were, trust me, I was happy just to be able to go out there and strum my guitar and sing my songs. There was very few band shows during those days, but the solo shows that I got to do, yeah, I was thankful to play music, but trust me, it's a lot better when we got back with the whole entire Alice Cooper band and we're able to play those songs in front of a crowd that's not completely, 8-10 feet apart each person. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd watched the video. I think the first show was like Atlantic City, and on the first song, you and Nita, when you guys went up to the front, you were just like talking to each other and laughing and smiling. It just looked like so nice to be just back out there.
Oh, we were both like, oh, okay, this is what it's like. This is what we've talked about. Because we text each other quite often. Everybody in the band, we have a few band chats that go on, and a lot of it's just, sending silly shit to each other and memes and, uh, and sort of like we were talking in the whole time amongst the band, like what's it going to be like when we get back out there. And I think when you saw us looking at each other, we were just like going, oh, so this is what it's like. This is as good as it as we were talking about it as it would be. And it was actually even better because the audience seemed to be even more into it than the last time before, because I think, like us, the audience doesn't take it for granted, live music, as much anymore. And we don't take an audience for granted. We try not to take an audience for granted ever, but after not playing for 18 months, definitely don't take anything that's related to live music for granted.
So was that when it clicked with you when you were on stage, like, oh, this is finally happening? Because I'm sure
Yeah.
during COVID, it was, oh, we'll play a show again in a month, and then, oh, we'll play a show again in 6 months. And I'm sure
Yeah,
it
well,
got to
we
a
had
point where you
that. We
just,
had that carrot in front of our head for all of 2020. It was basically like when it shut down the first time, it was like, okay, well, we're going to give it 2 months and we'll go back out. And then it's that date came closer and closer. And it was like, oh yeah, it looks like it's getting delayed and postponed until that year, till the summer or late summer. Oh, we'll do fall touring. And it just it kept getting, it's like as soon as we get up close to the date, then the goalposts would move.
yeah.
And so I guess we could have never really, really expected to know what it felt like until we were actually on stage. Even when I was flying to the tour and flying there, I was like, well, we still, we're going to need to get through rehearsals. We're going to
Yeah.
need to get through, first getting into the United States for me, because both Tommy and I flew from Europe. And then we're going to have to make sure that, after the first show, there's not some crazy outbreak or anything like that. So, I always kind of, I'll believe it when I'm on stage. And that's been my mantra um, before the pandemic. I was, believe it when you're on stage. That's the best way to look at things, because, I would always visualize of what it could be like and what I think it would be like. But until you're there, you never know.
Yeah, that I mean, you guys got caught with that. It was the 2020 Christmas pudding. You guys were all there, and then Alice and Cheryl just had to get
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah. That was like it's such a weird time because, they wanted to do the event so bad, and they were trying to come up with all these different, scenarios. Well, you guys, the band can still do it, and we'll just watch from, we'll be on via satellite. We'll be on screens. Like, no, they're, there's a reason why it's called the Alice Cooper Christmas pudding. It's not the Alice Cooper band guys and girl, Christmas pudding. So it was the right decision to not do it in 2020. It made 2021, the one that we just did, so much more memorable and meaningful, because we did it and it was done right, and they raised a ton of money for charity. And hell, man, I got to jam with two different eras of Alice Cooper band. Nita Nita was actually on her own solo tour, so she couldn't make it on this one. So Orianthi came in, and she did some of her own songs, but she also came up with the Alice Cooper band and played a few songs. But at the same time, Teddy Zigzag, who was from a different era of Alice, from the Brutal Planet and Dragontown eras, he came up on stage with us. And so you had that era of Alice Cooper band, Ori's era of Alice Cooper band, and I've been able to be a part of all of it. And it was a very cool experience.
Yeah, so you guys are not slowing down now. You have January starts your shows, you're going through April, then you have a month off, and then you're just in Europe. Got a lot
I'll
going
believe
on.
it when I'm on
Well,
stage.
yeah, hopefully
but yeah,
hopefully when you're
yeah, but like I said, I'm staying hopeful, and I'm staying very positive about things. I'm super excited about all the things that we're doing, not just with the band, but what I'm doing with what I just put together with a bunch of the with the In the Trenches alumni, and a bunch of friends that I have. We put together the first time I've ever recorded a Christmas song. I did a Christmas cover, and we're releasing that in just a couple of days. So maybe by the time this is aired, this will be out, and you'll be able to go check it out. It's on the main site to see it. It's just called ryanroxie.com/Christmas song. But I can tell you now, I did a cover of the Slade classic "Merry Christmas, Everybody." And it's a really cool, if you know anything about the band Slade, they were just such a cool rock band from the UK back in the 70s and stuff. And so, and all throughout, up until current, I actually think there is a couple, versions running now and touring now. But, they did a Christmas song back in the day that just, to me, has really held its own and stands on its own. So I did a different version of it. I put my own twist on it, and hopefully people will really dig on it. We got a lot of special guests, a lot of people that have been guests on the podcast contributed to it, and even Alice Cooper and his family are in the video. So you can go check that out. It's on my official YouTube channel, most probably at this point. And then, yeah, it's money goes to charity. So it's a win-win for everybody. And at the end of the day, it's a Christmas song. So I can play it for a few weeks before Christmas, put it away, and bring it out next year, dust it off.
you'll feel just as fresh.
I think so. Maybe maybe we'll add a guest here, add a guest there, but at the same time, the song sounds great the way it is. I mean, I think it stands on its own for its own version of it, and a great song's a great song, and Slade wrote the song, so it's timeless, and hopefully my version will stand up there and get played on a few playlists here and there.
All right, I have one more question for you. So this might be the most important question of the interview. It's not mine. You had mentioned Nita was on her solo tour. I was lucky enough to catch one of the shows, and she has a very important question. She wants to know, Ryan Roxie, how are the avocados in Sweden this time of year?
They're crap. They're so crap, and that's the thing. It's such, I don't understand. Okay, if someone was to ask me, what's your biggest gripe about Sweden? And of course, people would say, oh, well, it's the darkness. It stays dark all the time, or you got to pay so much taxes, or it snows all the time. It's freezing. It's cold. No, all those things you can deal with. It's just, but the avocados is what I can't deal with. They import avocados from Chile to just do the geography. Chile, South America, to Stockholm, Sweden. It's all the way around the world. You cross hemispheres, you cross the equator, everything. And by the time they get here, if you find the perfect avocado, it's like finding Shangri-La. It's like finding Mecca. It's like finding, what happens in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Covenant. It's literally a miracle to find the perfect avocado. And if you find an avocado that you think is perfect, you better eat that avocado that day, because tomorrow it'll be gone. It'll be bad. So yeah, it's quite funny. Me and Nita do have a running joke about avocados, because that's what's on my what do you call it? My writer. And my wife's just looking at me going, what are you talking about avocados for? But it's what I talk about,
Important
avocados.
stuff.
The thing is, it is one macadamia nuts and avocados are my sort of little rock star brown M&Ms writer items. And so Nita and I always have a laugh about that.
All right. Well, that is all I have for you today. Thank you
You're doing
very
great,
much,
man.
for
Great
joining me.
interview. Great talk. I appreciate your questions. And if anybody wants to go check out more about my world, just go check out ryanroxie.com because it has all the information about the Christmas song. It has all the information about the podcast. If you're on YouTube, maybe you're watching YouTube right now, just go to my official YouTube channel and you'll see all the videos that are not just podcast related, guitar playing related, music videos, interviews, this interview probably right now. And that's just Ryan Roxie Official at youtube.com/Ryan Roxie Official.
I will be sure I'll link everything down in the description. Hopefully in January, we can get you over to the States, get you some decent avocados. And
please do. Please be on the lookout for them. But that's the thing about decent avocados. You have to find the perfect one at the perfect time. And then you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to eat this? I'm going to eat this avocado. Now, I know I've gone on far too long about avocados, but there's certain things that you have to eat with them. Because everybody knows about the avocado smash and the avocado toast, where you smash it on a piece of toast. And that's kind of like, that's so 2020 or 2019 or whatever. But now the thing for me is the avocado butter and tortilla snack. And that's one thing that you have to try. You just take a regular flour tortilla, slap some butter on there, take an avocado, the perfect avocado, spread it all over there, pour some salt on it, wrap it up. It's the perfect snack.
I'll try that at some point, and I think that is a great place to end. Thank you very much, Ryan Roxie.
Thank you, Sam. Have a good one, buddy.